to talk about how to pick the right social media platforms for your business. And so that could be anything from Instagram to Twitter to TikTok and all the things in between. So we're going to touch on a few points and walk kind of just through it together. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the fact that not all social media platforms are created equal, right? They don't all function the same. They don't all get used by the same type of users, and they're all just, slightly different in different ways. So it's not enough to just create your account and then post every once in a while and just call it a day, especially now people are expecting a higher level of engagement, and platforms are trying to get you to spend as much time on the app as possible. So whether it's you or your followers or whoever, they want to keep you around, right? So deciding, which platform is right for you, you really want to ask yourself first, are my ideal clients spending time on this platform? And that's one of the main questions I like to ask myself, and I encourage my clients to ask themselves to really focus their time, right? So you only have so much time in the day. And it's a very valuable resource. We don't get any time back. And so we want to make sure we're spending it on the right things. And so part of that is your social media platforms. Are you spending time on the right platforms? So let's take a look at some of the demographics for each of the platforms. We're going to look at Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, and TikTok. And you'll even see that there are platforms that I technically have that I don't really utilize. And I'll talk a little bit more about why and kind of what that looks like. So let's dive right in. Okay, so first up, let's talk about Instagram. So Instagram is, a very millennial Gen Z type of platform, right? So 14.5% of global users are women between the ages of 18 and 24. So that's, still within that millennial range. And also some of that Gen Z range, right? And so those are typically females, and then men within that same age range take up about the same amount, so 15 to 33% of active global users. So the rest of that, is divided up between every other age group, between each gender, but it's helpful to know, okay, so these are some of the, highest amounts of people who are spending time on these platforms are going to be some of those younger generations. And, a lot of women and men are spending equal amounts of time on the platform, which is also helpful to know. So a little bit more about the age. So 50% of the global Instagram population is 34 years old or younger. So millennials, Gen Zers, all that fun stuff. It's just really helpful to be aware of that, right? So for example, I'm not necessarily targeting millennials and Gen Z with my marketing. Those aren't necessarily my target clients. And so while I do have an active Instagram profile and presence, it's not necessarily where I'm spending all of my time and energy, because that's not who I'm going after, right? But if you want to work with millennials and Gen Z, or, if you're marketing to teenagers or even kids or things like that, you're going to want to think about who's spending time there. And so it's not a matter of you don't need those platforms or you don't need to be on them, but it's more so how much time are you going to devote to creating the content for them and engaging on them. So now a quick little analysis on that. Like I said, Gen Z and millennial of any gender is really going to be on Instagram. And so if you are looking to target that demographic, you're going to want to spend some time there. Another thing to look at, so it's not just about age and gender and things like that, but other things to consider when thinking about whether or not you want to spend time on Instagram is your content visually friendly? So do you have a business or a product that you can create really great visual content? Because Instagram is primarily and pretty much exclusively visual, it's really going to be important that you're attracting people with the visual content you're creating. So, asking yourself, can you or do you want to take pictures? Do you have the tools and the skill set to do those things well? Do you have the time to invest in learning these different things and creating those really great photos and videos? And it's not just even the time, it's the interest, right? So this is something I do every day. I was working on some social media posts for a client earlier today. And if I didn't enjoy creating the content, creating the graphics, exploring the videos, piecing all those things together, I would have been miserable, right? So asking yourself some of those questions, and that doesn't mean you can't be on the platform, but it does mean you may need to consider when you're creating content or whether or not you want to, outsource that and have someone else help you. The other thing that you want to ask yourself is, are you willing to stay up to date on the latest trends? So this is something that can get really tricky, even for me, where it is my job and I'm in it every day. It is such a fast moving platform. All of them are, but especially Instagram, they're always adding something new. So, do you have the time to stay up to date with that? And do you want to, really utilize those different tools? And then are you open to experimenting with those different features? So for example, anytime they roll out something new, it's going to be something that they really want people to use, right? So when Reels came out, they were super excited about it. They wanted everybody to be using it. And so if you were using Reels in the very first few, weeks, even, or months of the launch, a lot of that content would have been promoted and kind of pushed by the algorithm. And they did the same thing with carousel images and all those different pieces. So just considering, how up to date do you like to stay with tech, all those different pieces. I mean, I manage multiple Instagram accounts and they even have changed the formatting. And so there are some days when I go in to post an Instagram story and I'm like, I cannot find this Instagram story button because they've moved it. And so, ideally, you're just going to have your one account that you have to manage, but even taking the time to understand those things, make sure that you're staying up to date on that. Those are really important and helpful things to think about. So it's not just, are your audience on it, but are you willing to take the time to invest in understanding the platform, in creating the content, and making sure that it's really good, especially with how saturated all of these platforms are. Mediocre content just isn't going to cut it. Not if you're really looking to grow and really looking to have it be a huge impact for your business. So just a few things to think about. All right, so next let's talk about Facebook. So the partner to Instagram. So on Facebook, we actually see that men between the ages of 25 and 34 are the largest demographic across the platform, and women make up about 40% more likely to create groups that become meaningful to their audience. So what does this really tell us? It means, if you want to be targeting men within that age range, kind of these young adult men, Facebook is a great place to be. And if you want to target women, using Facebook groups is a really important tool. And so that's something to even consider. Again, it's not just posting content, it's actually using the platform and all that it offers to really make the most of it. Another interesting thing is that senior citizens are currently the smallest age group on Facebook, but it's also the fastest growing. And so 46% of Americans over the age of 65 are using Facebook. So if you're really looking to connect with people who are, in that baby boomer or even Gen X kind of demographic age range, it's going to be a solid tool to use, right? They are the ones who were around when Facebook started out and really were some of the early adopters of it. And so they've likely stuck around and stuck with it, right? So even just thinking about that age demographic and how that continues to grow. So if you're looking to really connect with a lot of senior citizens or older generations, Facebook is definitely a place that you want to invest some time. So definitely helpful. Facebook's one of the platforms that I really like to spend some time on because that is, I'm looking to connect with people who are in that Gen X and baby boomer generations to help them build their businesses and help them with their digital strategy and all those different pieces. So I like to make sure that my Facebook is up to date and all those different things. So definitely a helpful thing to think through. Some other questions to ask yourself, I talked a little about Facebook groups, but they're continuing to grow and just become a really popular tool for businesses. And I'm in a bunch of different Facebook groups, more than I can possibly even manage, but they are a real asset. And I've gotten not only business, but contractors from them. And, I've considered creating Facebook groups to help build my business, but currently I just don't have the bandwidth for it or the need, but it is something that's on my mind of, okay, how can I, utilize that tool? And then the other thing too, to remember about Facebook is that they really want you to pay to play, right? I was just on a call with a client actually talking about this. We were talking about whether or not they should even spend any time on Facebook. So it was kind of funny. I was like, oh, I'm talking about this, 30 minutes from now. And so we really talked about how the reality is Facebook wants to make money. At the end of the day, that's what they really want to do. Yeah, they want you to help connect you with people, but they're all about the profit, right? And so they want you to pay for ads. They want you to boost your posts, all of those kinds of things. And so again, it's not just a matter of, hey, I'm going to post some content. And, I have this conversation with a lot of my clients is we're posting constantly, but we're not getting engagement. We're not getting reach, like all these different things. And the truth is Facebook doesn't want you to get those things because they want you to pay for them. So that's something to consider, right? So it doesn't mean you should completely throw this out. Facebook's great for some SEO and just helping to get you in front of some of your clients in that way. But consider how you might want to use the ads platform, and then also make sure to do some research, which I'll definitely be talking on this in the future when I have some time to do a little bit more research and they figured more things out. But, as I'm sure many of you have probably heard, or if you haven't, Apple has changed a lot of their privacy policies, which is impacting Facebook's ad reach. And Virginia recently passed a law, or at least they're talking about it. I believe it passed, but they're doing similar kind of data privacy laws as California recently implemented. And while those aren't going to be implemented until 2023, there's still going to be that's still something we want to consider, right? So all of that's going to impact the amount of data that Facebook can pull from the internet, from your phone, all that kind of stuff to really target ads. And so what that does for us as business owners is it's going to increase the cost of those ads. So we're gonna have to pay more to get the same kind of response, or maybe even pay more and get, less of a response. So something to consider definitely with Facebook is, how do you want to manage it? Do you want to run ads? That kind of stuff. So, just a few things to consider. All right, LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, there are 57% of the users are male and 43% are female, and 37% of US adults who use LinkedIn are 30 to 49. So, definitely a little bit older than what we see on Instagram, for sure. But it's also nice to know that there's not too much of a gap between the genders on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with men or with women, it's still a really solid platform. And it's definitely, obviously much more professional focused. And so you're going to want to create content around that. And so just consider, what that looks like. 57% of LinkedIn traffic is mobile. And so you want to make sure that anything that you're creating and sharing is mobile friendly. So that's a whole other topic for another time, but your websites and your landing pages must be mobile friendly in today's, day and age, because everyone is doing a million things on their phone. And so if they find you on Instagram or find you on LinkedIn, click on that link and it takes them to a site that is not optimized for mobile, you're losing opportunities. So that's definitely helpful to know that, more than 50% of people are on mobile for LinkedIn. And 30% of the company's engagement is actually through LinkedIn or through the employees. So if you have a company or if you are an employee at a company, it can be really helpful to engage with the content of your employer. But it's also good to know, okay, is your following, is your engagement people who are already a part of your business? And if so, how can you get to that 60% of people, who are engaging, who are not your employees? So just some things to consider there. And like I mentioned, because most people are, or more than half of the people who are using LinkedIn are doing so on their phones, it's really important to make sure you've optimized all of your content for mobile. All right, some other things to consider. What type of voice are you using? We kind of talked about mobile already. So what voice are you going to use? And this might be different than what you put on Instagram, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be completely different. But again, with this being a much more professional focused, kind of platform, and making sure that you are sharing content that makes sense to what your audience expects and wants to see on your platform or on LinkedIn. People are kind of venturing more into sharing personal things, which I think is wonderful, but it's still a very professional focused platform. So just consider what that looks like for you and your business. And then definitely think about how you can balance your personal page and your company page, right? So taking the time to consider what that looks like. So for example, I will post every Monday my blog on my website, but also as an article on my personal LinkedIn page, which then I reshare on my business page. And so, it's utilizing these two different channels on LinkedIn, and I have a lot more followers on my personal page. And so it's even a matter of how do I invite those followers to follow my business page so that they can get the information that I'm sharing there. So definitely thinking through kind of all of those different pieces is super helpful. All right, next let's talk about Twitter. So for 28.4% of global Twitter users are between 35 and 49 years old. So looking more at that elder millennial, Gen Xer kind of grouping. And then 70% of the audience is typically male. So that's also something to consider. So if you're looking to connect with, a 40-year-old male population, Twitter could be a really great place for you to look out or to look into. 42% of users have a college degree or other form of higher education. 92% of US tweets come from 10% of Twitter users and are much more likely to lean Democratic than Republican. So do with that what you will, but that can also be something helpful to know of, okay, if this is a pretty typical kind of setup, how does that impact you, if at all? And 70% of Americans get their news from Twitter. So I've really found throughout my experience and research is that Twitter is a great platform for writers, for news organizations, for connecting, obviously with that male audience, but, really focusing on that quick turnaround and thinking about, okay, how can I have conversations with people on Twitter? So that's kind of the way I approach it. A couple other things to think about. Like I said, it's fast moving. And so a lot of times people who get a really great response on Twitter are those who are spending time posting multiple times a day and are actively engaging and just really investing in the platform in a way that you may not on other platforms. So think about, how much time you want to invest, what it looks like, and how you want to connect with other people. All right, next, let's talk about Pinterest. So as you can see, this is one I don't currently keep up to date that much. It just continues to fall to the bottom of my to-do list. But Pinterest audience is predominantly female and 35% of users are between 35 to 49 years old, while 34% are 18 to 29. So, it's really still that kind of young adults or, adult age. And then 97% of queries, so if you look on Pinterest, are actually unbranded. So people aren't looking for a specific brand when they're going to Pinterest. They're looking to discover something new, to explore new options, to get some inspiration, all that kind of stuff. And then 8 out of 10 moms use Pinterest. So Pinterest is really great if you are looking to connect with mothers or looking to connect with women, looking to connect with people who are looking for some inspiration is a great place. So as you can see, I have not invested in my Pinterest recently. I have 0 monthly views, 6 followers and 3 following. And a lot of that just is because I know that my target demographic is not currently on the platform in the way that I want it to be, right? So I get a lot more traction out of some of the other platforms that I'm on. And so I've just made the decision to, maintain as best I can, but to really focus on some other platforms. So this is something I definitely want to adjust. I would love to have a strong Pinterest following, but it's very different from a lot of other platforms. And so it just takes a little bit of a different approach. All right. So again, some things to consider here. Do you have content to share? So it's great for sending people to your website, sending people to blogs or products or things like that. And then definitely asking yourself, do you have the skill set to create those graphics and capture the attention of users? So it's, again, a very visual platform. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're creating things that are going to capture people's attention and get them to click and save what you're creating. All right, last but certainly not least, let's talk a little bit about TikTok. I do technically have a TikTok for WDS, but I have not posted anything on it because it's more so for me to explore things and experiment than anything else. But it's also not where my target demographic is. So teens make up 32.5% of TikTok's active user accounts in the US, and there are 30 million monthly active users in the United States. I am one of them. I'm on that app way too much. And so as you see, the highest amount of users is actually people between the ages of 25 and 34, with 13 to 17-year-olds following very closely behind. And then as you get a little bit older, it drastically decreases. And then 60% of users are female and 40% are male. And the average TikTok user spends about 46 minutes a day on the app. Now, I know I spend way more than that. I know a lot of my friends do too. So the good news is that TikTok has found the way to capture and maintain and like retain people's attention, right? And so if you can get on the app and get connected and really use it well, it could be a great opportunity to get in front of and stay in front of your ideal clients. But it's just a matter of whether or not they're there. So if you are looking to connect with people between the ages of 13 to 34 for your business, then TikTok is definitely a place you want to be. So a couple thoughts on that one. All right, now to the Q&A. And I know we've got a couple already, so let me pull those up. And I know we kind of sped through that. So feel free to ask me to return to anything that you want me to cover again. Okay, so great question. So Alicia asks, with all this happening, do you suggest influencer marketing more? And I think that was when we were talking a little bit about the privacy stuff. So influencer marketing, I think, is great. It takes a lot of work and it needs to be really intentional, and you need to be prepared to pay for it, right? Something that's recently, it's not necessarily that new, but recently is coming kind of back to light, is nano influencers. And so that's where you connect with people who have, anywhere and basically less than 10,000 followers. So we're talking like maybe 1,000 to 5,000, something like that. And those are actually some really great people to connect with, especially if you're just starting up or like getting into the influencer game, because they have a small audience, but it's very dedicated, right? So they really have an understanding of what their audience wants to see, knows what to talk about. And sometimes they'll be willing to trade product. So like, let's say you have a product you want them to promote. They might be willing to just trade you, the product for a post or, a story or something like that. So I definitely think influencer marketing is something worth exploring. It's just a matter of being intentional with it. So great question. All right, let me move this over just a little bit because I can't see here. Okay, so the other question we have is, if you have a product that applies to multiple demographics, would you market it completely differently on each platform? For instance, silly young targeting students on TikTok versus a sleek, sophisticated targeting on LinkedIn, or do you need to be somewhat consistent? So I am a big proponent and believer in targeting your content for the platform. So definitely the type of content that you're going to share on TikTok will be different than what you want to share on LinkedIn, mainly because the people you're talking to are going to be very different, right? So one of my clients I was working on this morning, they have it's a nonprofit. And so I know that their target demographic as far as volunteers and participants and things like that are going to be on Instagram. But their donors and the older generations of people that they want to participate are going to likely be on LinkedIn. And so the kind of content we want to create on Instagram can be the same general topic, right? So it could be talking about the nonprofit and what they do specifically, but the way in which we want to talk about it is definitely going to be different. And so while it doesn't mean I wouldn't post about donating to the nonprofit on Instagram, I definitely would spend more time doing that on LinkedIn, because I know that my target market for donors, they're going to be on LinkedIn, whereas I'm really cultivating the Instagram to be more for that younger generation who are looking to be volunteers. So if you have a product and it has these kind of two different demographics, the message you're going to want to create for each of them is going to be different, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to kind of isolate a platform. So it kind of will take some creativity and figuring out, okay, how can I communicate a specific idea about the product in ways that will connect with different people? And that kind of goes the same for like any platform. So doing really great social media marketing is ultimately going to be creating a strategy and content for each of your platforms, depending upon that platform and who's on it. So that's a great question. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Yes, there will be a recording of this for anyone who is not able to make it to the entire thing. So feel free to check that out. We've got a couple more minutes here, so if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A box. And if not, just a reminder, you are always welcome to schedule a one-on-one 30-minute consultation with me for free where we can talk about any of your digital marketing questions. So awesome. Okay. So as you guys are thinking about any of those other questions you might have, let's talk about next week. So next week, I'm going to be talking about creating a social media strategy. So definitely feel free, or please join me back here again. And of course, if you're not able to, there will be that recording, so you will definitely have that. And then I'm still doing free website audits. So if you're looking to zhuzh up and do some spring cleaning for your website, I would love to audit it and tell you just my professional design and marketing opinion on it to help you just make the most of it. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have anything else, feel free to respond to the email that I'll be sending out shortly. And I'm really glad you guys were here and joined me this week. And if you need anything else, please reach out. Hope you have a great weekend. All right. Bye.